So first of all, why we're here? We represent a Polish company, a system integrator, that we were doing a lot of work for Polish law enforcement entities. And roughly 2 years ago, when the PNR directive, so a directive was implemented in Europe, Polish border guard has approached to us and asked us to help them to set up a system of providing data from the airlines to their systems. And since we were already there, so we were already delivering those systems, we are till today delivering an integration bus where a big airlines, most of the time, provide the data to the, like LOT, for example, or Lufthansa, for that example, with their old style integration buses, provide the data to the different units within the border guard, and border guard further distributes it. Like, first of all, you may ask yourself why this cooperation was forced and what border guards are doing with those data. So the story is that after terror threats, mainly in France, the EU has established a process where they already had the API data. So the data from the not from the reservation systems, but from the DCS, departure systems, they already had some personal information transferred to them. But they didn't have enough time to screen it. They didn't have enough time to analyze it and to make a proper decisions when someone was entering the Schengen part. So they thought how to extend this, how to have more time and more broaden the scope of information. You will see a slide in a second. And that's why they thought that, oh, the airlines, these big airlines, they already have a reservation systems and they have much more data there. So who is traveling with whom? Under what type of document, personal ID document it is traveling? How did he bought the ticket? And we could have that information not at departure time, not in maybe a few hours or maybe even minutes before the guys shows up at our land, at our border, but we could have it 24 or 72 or even more hours ahead of when these guys are coming. So we would have more time to analyze the consequences and to do something with it. So this was, the PNR was aimed at fighting terror, and yet you seem to be victims of this, this regulation a bit. Well, the PNR record, where it comes from? It comes from this reservation, these old-style reservation systems, and it's very complicated. So it requires like all the personal data, like names, addresses, email, phone, flight legs, also with return trip. So the normal airline, the normal reservation systems know that we're flying to Brussels and back. Travel documents, bags, seat, special service requests, even meals are there somewhere in these structures, although due to GDPR regulations, the border guard, at least the Polish border guard, is not processing that, that information. So, well, you don't have that in most of the cases. So, in the regulation, it's written that you would only provide the data that you're processing as normal business operations. So the regulation does not require you to fetch all this, oh, and how many bags you have. If you don't really have this information already, you don't need to provide it to the border guard, to the POU units. This is how the directive is formulated. Having said that, you may have some information that it's in a completely different structure or side notice to your normal business. But if you have it, then, well, you should provide it to the border guard. So, you know, let's say you have a list of passengers, but then on the side someone wrote you an email that these passengers will be traveling with this and this luggage. Under the regulation, when you look at the legal part of it, you should match the Excel with your email and provide it to the border guard. At least this is what, as much as inconvenient it would be, this is what the regulation says. So the PNR record itself, there are different structures defined and different methods of transfer. Regulation mainly focus on MQ buses, but you would also it's possible to send those data via AS4 or old style aviation networks. What we're doing, we're trying to, and actually Polish Border Guard did it from the very beginning. It was not very successful, and they remade it now. They made, for the small carriers, the POU on itself made a web portal that you would be able to fill those structures kind of manually and send it to them if you don't have a proper reservation system to integrate, which is actually one of the challenges of the small carriers anyway. Right now they changed it, so at least the Polish guys has implemented a nicer portal. Tomek, I don't know, you've seen it. You made it.
Yeah, we made it.
So this is still a method of, well, you're able to, with each POU, each border guard in Europe, I think you can submit data manually in a sense. So this is one method of transferring that information. In terms of timing, it's also something that I mentioned from the beginning, that one of the primary reasons for the PNR regulation was to push that timeline back. So for the border guard to have more time to analyze your data. So historically, API data was transferred to the airline at departure time. And then the PNR regulation, which is a bit strange, enforce different times, and this is the chart that we've made, that, for example, Polish guys say something like this: you have to provide PNR, complete PNR at departure time, and, well, basically all of the other guys that we are integrated says the same. I think all the countries say the same. So last but not least, you have to provide at departure time your PNR records. Now, Polish guys says you have to provide the first push of the data. So whatever you have, 24 hours to 48 to 24 hours ahead of time. So you have some flexibility there, but whatever you have 24 hours, at least 24 hours before departure time, you should submit to us. Hungary says something different, for example. They say 12 hours. Turkey say minus 72 hours. So even though maybe Turkey is not the best example because they're out of PNR directive, but they have own system, but all these guys that we have here have a bit of a different method of implementing the PNR. And timing. Also, like on the very beginning, we thought the Polish regulation is very strict, and that the Polish guys made a big, like, overwhelming to they made too much. So why they are so strict about timing, why they impose financial penalties on the carriers, where we thought that they shouldn't do it. But then when we developed the PNRGO platform and we started to talk with the other countries, actually the penalties are in many of them. Like Hungary has higher penalties than Poland, at least written, yes, because there are two things, and one is what is written, and the other thing what is really enforced. And we can tell you that in Poland, they try to enforce penalties, and they try to follow, because they have a legal obligation. Like the law is there to, if you don't send the data, you get penalized, and there is a tariff to it. But then they realized that half of the airlines in Poland would go out of business if they would impose all those penalties on them. So they knew that they went a bit too far with this process. Like they have to have a waiver because right now the waiver in the Polish law is that you will not be penalized if you submit information about the failure in your IT systems ahead of the flight. But this is stupid. Like, how can we know that our IT system will fail ahead of the flight? Like, it fails and we didn't submit the data. So the nature of failure of the IT system is that we know it only when it fails, not when we plan that it will fail, right? So this waiver, it's not good and they realized that they wrote it in a wrong way, in a sense. And they even, when we talk with them, they even say that they will change it, but then, you know, you may heard, but in Poland there is a lot of legal stuff that's going on, and the court system is more important than some PNR directive, which is a problem for like 60 people in this room and not for general public in Poland. So these regulations, I believe these regulations will change, but they will not change anytime soon. So we need to survive with them. How it works, basically the data flow, it's quite simple, and we take two informations. So one information we need to get from you guys, so whatever you're operating, any reservation system or Excel spreadsheet or whatever, we need to get the list of who's traveling from you guys to be able to submit it to the border guard. And then we observe the MVT messages on the airport of arrival and departure.
Departure only.
Departure only. Huh? And we know then if we would go back. So we're catching this moment. So ATD time we're catching automatically from these MVT messages, and we know when it's a moment where we close the PAX list. Like, we know that once the flight is airborne, there will not be anyone jumping on or off. That would be pretty rare. So the moment the flight is airborne, we're clear to send that information, and it takes like a second. So you know, we're still at ATD. No one will try to analyze whether we submitted 1 second before or 1 second after ATD. Like, this is all very, very in time. So we submitted to the border guides. In different countries, I think most of the guys are within the border guards, right? Like, do we know any case that they are separate?
Yeah, but the official name is the Passenger Information Unit. So there are some countries that the unit was created especially for the PNR directive, but some others just did it using the police they already have on the border side.
So we submitted to them depending on where the flight is heading. So we kind of automatically, if you guys are flying this Warsaw Kiev flight, for example, we know that we should submit it to Polish guys, and if the flight would be to Brussels, we would know that this goes to Belgium. There is a challenge here because, you know, normally on the scheduled flights, we know that there is a daily flight, Monday 8 a.m., flying on this road, Kiev to Warsaw, right? But if you're on unscheduled flight, this may change. Like, even it may change like very fast before the departure time. Like, okay, so the 24 hours before you were flying to Warsaw, but actually a customer said, no, Warsaw, Berlin, which is only 30 minutes. So the enrollment procedure is one of the challenges that that we are facing and you are facing. Like, if there is a scheduled flight, there is time to inform the unit within Poland or within Germany or within whomever that there is this scheduled flight, we need to integrate the IT systems, we need to have the link to send you those data, and we need to make you aware that we will be sending the data, right? So there are two layers of this. First, that there is a such and such operator that is flying on this route and will be submitting you data. And then when we would take this scheduled flight, and then the guys are coming back, okay, if you have this scheduled flight and you will be sending us data, here is the link of IT link that you will be using to transfer that information. So then it takes different times. I think, I don't know if you can say normally, but I would say normally a few weeks to establish that channel of exchange of information. So this is one of the challenges of small carriers and unscheduled flights, that this enrollment needs to happen faster, or needs to be like a predefined in a sense. Yes, and I don't think we have a perfect method of doing it right now, but we're trying to make it as seamless as possible. Then there is this message here that the POU should confirm to us that they actually received that data and they're fine with it. This is not obligatory, I would say. Like sometimes Bodegat is using it, sometimes like it's not enforced.
Yes, this is a big picture here, but most of our carriers don't use it across, so they don't need any confirmation as the system are transactional.
Yes. So it's good enough that we know from here that we successfully delivered it here. So it didn't fail on the link. We know it without even this confirmation. We know that we delivered it to this place, to this MQ, and whether it was pushed further from there and picked up, like, it's good enough to deliver the mail to the mailbox. We don't need to check if someone actually picked it up from the mailbox, opened the envelope and read it, right? To take this comparison from standard mails. So one challenge I already said, this enrollment stuff. How we are easing it in a sense that we already have links to 6 countries. I had this.
Yes, 6 countries are.
So you can read the list.
Yes. So the statistics are that the 6 countries are currently ready, so we have already linked with them. 5 others are on the way currently. We have a strong discussion with the Russia, because they have started to, they've just remembered that they have a law, I think, enforced in 2013. So they remind that they have this law and then started to make it obligatory. And we have a free discussion with US, because there are some operators that used to fly to US a lot of, so we are looking for a chance to make a possibility to automatize the PNR data for the USA.
So looking at this enrollment, yes, we're reversing this path. We already have a link to, let's say, Bulgaria, right? And you guys, you didn't plan to fly to Bulgaria ahead of time, but now you have an unscheduled flight there. So we have already a channel to send them that information. So we are just left with the second task of notifying them that you as an operator, or you have this task of notifying them that you as an operator will be flying there. Depending on necessity and how we can bend those rules, I guess you will not be penalized for sending the data and notifying them shorter ahead of this operation, even not fulfilling the full enrollment procedure as for the scheduled carrier. Like, it's a bit of a bending the rules, but I guess it's good enough. Yeah, I don't see we have any better methods of doing it, because otherwise the other 2 options are worse. So not notifying them and not sending the data, this is the option number 2, and flying, or option number 3, not flying. So, you know, out of these 3 choices, because you can't waiting until the full enrollment is done, meaning no flying. So if we have a channel, we can send the data and then the paperwork flies a bit afterwards. So I think that's the best situation, least risky to the compliance process. Second is this lack of awareness. So there is a lot of carriers that come in here, even on the scheduled flights, that are not aware of the PNR regulations in Poland, and they're simply ignoring those regulations, yes, and they're fully non-compliant in a sense. And I guess there are more countries like this, and for small carriers it's even more difficult, because some countries, even though they have the regulation, they don't apply it to small carriers. But then it makes you also kind of aware. France is this example. Like France is waiving this regulation and saying, well, you don't need to provide that data yet to us. I think Sweden was the same.
Sweden, Ireland as well.
Yeah, but then you need to keep track of it, and you be aware of that for these countries, you don't need to submit that information, and for these countries, you should submit this information. So the awareness of this different mechanism, and then going back to when to send those data and via which channel, this is definitely a challenge, and at least we're trying to, for Europe, we're trying to keep that track, the table for you, and be able to tell what you should do for different countries. Then there is a manual data entry, and this is something that we try to take away by integrating with Leon, by giving you the ability to provide us the data in different formats, like that you would use from your standard operations, like Excel. And then we take it and try to push it through the systems to be able to submit it to the particular PO unit in this MQ service bus that they would expect from these scheduled operators and these legacy systems.
You mentioned various formats and you mentioned Excel. Are you thinking about processing PNL files as well?
Not exactly, because the PNR directive strictly says that you need to use PNRGO formats, and there are 2 XML and EDIFACTS files that are usually unknown for smaller carriers. PNR is with the L at the end is something that you use when you expose your passengers into the DCS system during the departure. So note, the PNR and PNL are the different formats.
I think technically it would be possible, but you would not be compliant with this 48 hours ahead, because when you have PNL, when do you send the PNL data to the airport?
In general, 24 hours before the flight, but I can send it 48 hours, for example.
Yes, and
I'm taking it from tour operator, and then I'm forwarding it to the airport. And I have an agreement with Polish PU that we are collecting only date of the flight and name of the passengers, which are data which are in PNL file. So I would like to know if you are thinking about processing PNL, so I don't need to fill up the Excel file.
Yes, so if you are asking if you can use already PNRs that you have, so the answer is yes. In our system, we allow to import data, and we can translate them into the PNR format.
If you're asking, can we translate the PNLs into PNRs? Yes, we can.
Perfect.
But this is not a rule for the portals made by particular border guards. So this is some extra solutions.
Okay, thank you.
Oh yes, this is this enrollment slide that I was describing before. So the challenge here, as I said, that each POU has a different different process, and this different kind of certification process that you need to follow. And this certification process is, even if technically it seems the same, it's pretty different from the organizational standpoint. So some POUs are pretty fast. Some POUs lets you wait in the queue until they are ready to process the application. Some POUs provide pretty fast technical information on integration, and they're like Polish guys are nearly self-sufficient in this. But some have it outsourced to some IT companies totally. So these are the challenges that when connecting to these POUs, and these enrollment procedures are pretty cumbersome to us also. Yes, so we would like to have connected more countries, but it simply takes pretty a lot of effort in our platform to connect country by country and extend this this field of operations.
Yes, here is worth to understand that each country requires a certification. So even if you have ad hoc flight and we can help you to submit the data, it doesn't mean that you don't need the certification. It must be done anyway.
Mm-hmm. And of course, once we are certified with the country, then we track to provide the data in a proper format, in a proper way, and proper scope and proper timing. So this is completely, like, in our platform is completely taken away from the carrier. As much as we have a data, we would submit it instantaneously. And if we don't, and we think we should have, we would alert you guys that something is wrong and you have to kind of speed up the process. So let's say we know that there is a flight planned and the 24 hours time gets passed and we don't have any passenger list. So the system would alert you guys to submit that date either via email or email, I think, today.
Email, usually.
So basically what we did a cloud platform, so you can sign up online, most of the cases. And it's accessible via web browser simply, that allows for you guys to monitor and configure your flights, and we take it, if in case we're working together with Leon guys, we take it automatically from their systems, and we connect that and monitor that to send it to the actual POUs that are required. Even though sometimes now we are having this case that even if, which is a more complicated case for the future, that even if you're not departing or landing at particular airport, but you're entering the airspace of Russia, the case,
Russia.
Yes, you should submit that information who's on board. So this will be much more challenging from the operational perspective, because we need to understand whether your flight plan assumes that you will be entering the airspace of Russia or not. Maybe there are obvious cases that you cannot fly like this. You will fly through Russia, but maybe when you're flying from Warsaw to Riga, you can also fly without entering the airspace of Russia and entering the flight. So this case will be a bit more challenging, but we're working on this. We're also working on a bit of the PNR question of here from the room, that once we have this PNR information, we thought that it would be pretty easy for us to send the PNR information as well. So we will be, and we are in certain cases, the originator of the PNR information sent to the airport. So the other way around, you're asking, I'm sending already PNR information, why don't you send the PNR information based on top of it? we're working on something reverse. So we already have PNR information. Why don't we send the PNR information down the road as well? So, and we were asked by some tour operators to provide it. So we thought of implementing that part here, which is technically it's pretty easy for us to do. From submitting the data, it's pretty easy also. So I already described it, either from some API calls and web integration as we have, or from some other sources that you're able to provide. And we are planning and we're willing to be pretty flexible here on the way that you know, any method of providing us information is good if it's repeatable, I would say. So we will be pretty here on this link. We want to be flexible and we want to help you guys with the minimum effort required to provide that information. We are monitoring, so within the platform, we are monitoring what's going on. So we know that everything went fine when submitting that information. So, and I hope we will be soon having that information in Lyon also. So we will provide like a green-red light or green-yellow light that will be pushing across the information flow that everything is fine and you can fly wherever you want, and we are compliant with the PNR regulation in that sense. When working with Lyon, basically you don't need to touch our interface, right?
Yes, it was a goal to make the processes as much transparent as they can be. So with Leon, we made that all data are exchanged in very automated ways. So at the end, if you prepare the data in Leon and you put the passenger names to the database or to the text field, so it means that the integration with PNRGO is made fully automatically. So you don't need to take any other action to make any manual action on the PNRGO interface. So this was something that was very important for carriers that were using and they met with the Lyon and PNRGO.
Yes, and of course us standing here means that we will be extending that integration and following the integration and development of Lyon. So whatever, like I think there is on the roadmap also type of IDs and this red, green, yellow light that I said, and maybe some other stuff. So we are very committed of having that integration even better than it is today.
Yes, we need to think about to extend the backward confirmation, yeah, because this is something that could help to see that all the processes are fine. But at all, you don't need to care about anything on the PNRGO except to have an account, I think.
And countries, yes, of course.
Yeah, and countries. So
and countries that we support or we plan to support or that are currently waiving the obligation to the small carriers. We're trying to get as little information from Lyon as possible, in a sense. So when you look at the information flow, we take only the data that it's necessary for us to submit information. So this is based on this principle that if there is no information gathered during the normal business, we would not try to enforce additional duties on the carrier to provide that. So basically, if your passenger is flying with some ID number and you don't know whether it's passport number or ID number or anything like this, today we don't ask you to fill this information, and we are not asked to fill this information by the POUs as well. So if there is no information of these additional fields in the PNR records. So I don't know, bags or legs, for example. Yes, you may not know that this guy will be flying back on the flight a week after or a few hours after. Then we don't need to submit that information unless we know it. Yes, so this is a case where up for discussion of these legs.
But it's also the issue if the flight is inside or outside Schengen zone, because of course if you are going outside zone, you probably collect the information about travel documents, are you? So in case you collect this data, you must send and include it into the PNRGO message. So this is the goal, to understand if I am collecting anything, I am responsible to include this data. So at all, you should also send all emails, phone, contact details. Of course, this is not a case in the business flights, because usually somebody get chartering a flight, so we don't know even as the operator who will be flying, and we get this data at the very end of the path. But if there are some charters companies, you probably get some data from the tour operators. In this case, you still are responsible to forward this data into the PNRGO message.
Yeah, there even kind of with these legs, there is even more challenges you may face. So let's say this example of Kiev-Warsaw flight. So Kiev to Warsaw, Warsaw to Breslau. So you have two legs within country, and some people left at Warsaw and some people left in Breslau. What do you do with it? Like, which information do you provide for the full leg and which for the part? So at least on the declaration, we are able to make it live. And for example, do not submit the PNR information for this internal flight between, even if in Warsaw someone would actually join on board and fly to Breslau, we wouldn't submit it to the POUs because it's not necessary. So kind of we know which data to submit from such a legs, that some part of the leg is within the PNR obligation and some part of the leg is not within the PNR obligation. And on top, you may not know that you will be flying Warsaw to Breslau. So like the full flight would terminate in Warsaw also. Single flight is processed. I think we discussed that pretty good. So within our platform, we get that information from Leon or from you guys directly. We harmonize and structure this data. We keep the timing and we submit it wherever we have to submit it, and we observe the departure time from the actual airport. So we're pretty kind of trying to make it as automated as possible.
Alek, excuse me, one word about the crew APIs data, because there are some countries like Bulgaria, for example, that require also crew data, and usually carriers meet with the difficulties that the handlers, ground companies, are not able to process the crew data. So what we found was that crew are kept on the Leon. So carriers ask us, could you send crew data as well? So in parallel with the PNR data, we are also sending the crew APIs to particular countries that require. Mm-hmm. And this also happens not only with the passenger flight, but also with ambulance positioning or a ferry, for example. So this is also the obligation you should know, and you should check what is obligatory in a particular country.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and last but not least, we watch what's going on in our systems. We have it compliant with the data protection regulation, personal data protection regulation. We have to have those data to be able to provide you a service. but we make at least the effort of the border guard to protect it. So we protect it in a level not lower than our border guard. So we keep it encrypted via VPNs. We use encryption, so we protect that information so it's not compromised and leaked in any way. The same the border guard would do it. So although it's a service in cloud, we've made quite a big effort, and we have pretty good team in our company that deals with the data security. So we implied a lot of checks and measures to make that platform secure. Any questions?
I have a question. What are the countries that you can provide PNR data?
So at the moment we have Bulgaria, Hungary, Lithuania, Poland, UK, and outside the UAE we have Turkey. And we are on the way with the Germany, Belgium, Denmark, Sweden, and Austria. But what is worth to say, it's depend what is your priority, because some carriers are coming to us and say, I'm flying a lot to Croatia, for example. So for my point of view, I would like to be connected to Croatia. And even if some country is not on our list yet, it doesn't mean that you cannot bring the new country. So what we do in this case, we checked the regulation in country. We already have checked much more countries, but we see, for example, like Ireland and I don't know any examples. But
Sweden is...
But Sweden started to require from charters companies, so
okay.
so it's changed because they queued us on the last quarter, but they moved to the first quarter of 2020. So we track the regulation in each country and have own priority list. So, but it doesn't matter that you cannot speed up some country if you require.
Thank you. And a second question is the pricing structure. Will you charge per countries, aircraft, flights?
Okay, so at the moment, because we did a fixed price pricing list, so we have monthly fee for the carrier. But we are discussing other methods, especially with Lions, we have the over business. So this is something we would change, making an exception for Lyon, especially. So I think there would be two methods of if we look on the business price. One is the fixed price, depend of the services you need. You have a monthly price. Then we are thinking to allow to be counted for each flight. So not the tail, but how many operations you do.
So as I understand, you are flexible on its on a negotiation of the pricing, right?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, right now our pricing is on, we don't have it on the slides, but if you look at our website, PNRGO.com, you will see our existing pricing. And well, as Tomasz said, it's up for discussion. We are also changing it, like adjusting to, we're learning your market, so we're trying to adjust it to your model, and we're also trying to keep it low, to be honest. Yes, so we don't have the appetite of, I don't know, Rockwell Collins to charge anything from 100,000 up. so this is completely different approach from our side, I would hope.
Just to add, we have some cases that they came, the airline that say, the operator that say, I have only 7 flights per year to Poland. So fixed price, monthly fee, fixed price is not the deal for me. So if you can change it, yes. Mm-hmm. But when we extend the countries, it starts to be visible that that the number of operations every month are bigger. So the price started to be acceptable. Yes.
We already agreed to the per flight model that for Poland precisely. Yes. So if someone is flying to Poland twice a year, we'll fix it at some. I don't even remember the fee, but we'll fix it at some low number. Dobra, okay. But then if we are extending the principle is that once we'll be extending the coverage, the monthly fee would be much more cost effective to you guys. Okay, thanks a lot.
Sorry, I have one last question.
One last question.
You say that your data is on the cloud. Which cloud?
We have two clouds at the moment. We are using the French company OVH, and we have the IBM cloud. So this cloud both servers both data centers are located in the UA, and they are compliance with the regulations according to GDPR, if this is something you are asking.
Okay, and is it encrypted?
Yes, of course.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. We'll be staying for the rest of the day, so any questions, very welcome. Thank you very much.